Youngstown woke up under a gray November sky, and the sound of an alarm clock in a house on Maplewood Avenue broke the morning silence at 6:30 a.m. Michael Connolly reached for the bedside table, turning off the annoying alarm, and turned to his wife. Carrie was already sitting on the edge of the bed, combing her hair in front of the old mirror. At 35, she still looked attractive, although years of work and worry had left their mark on the corners of her eyes. Michael watched her morning ritual, carefully applying her makeup, choosing a blouse from her limited wardrobe. "Up early again," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "Havens wants me to be in the office by 8. He said he has an important meeting with clients from Cleveland," Carrie replied, without looking up from the mirror. Michael frowned. Over the past few months, the name Anthony Havens had been heard more and more often in their home. The owner of Havens Insurance, one of the largest insurance companies in Youngstown, was a successful businessman who was often mentioned in the local newspapers. Carrie had been his secretary for 3 years, but she rarely spoke about her boss at home. Footsteps sounded downstairs. Their 16-year-old son, Tommy, was coming down the stairs, getting ready for school. Michael got up and headed for the shower while Carrie finished getting ready. The kitchen in their 2-bedroom house was small but cozy. Carrie was standing at the stove making eggs when Michael came downstairs in his work clothes, blue jeans and a t-shirt with the logo of Joe's Garage, an auto repair shop. Tommy sat at the table, buried in his phone, an untouched piece of toast lying next to him. "Eat your breakfast," his father said, sitting down across from his son. "I'm not hungry," the teenager muttered, not looking up. "He's nervous about his math test," Carrie explained, placing a plate in front of her husband. "Mrs. Jenkins is known for her difficult assignments." Michael nodded, remembering his own school days. He had never been a straight A student, unlike Carrie, who had graduated from college with good grades. Sometimes this difference in education created tension between them, especially when it came to finances. Carrie glanced at her watch. "I have to go. Havens doesn't like tardiness." She kissed her husband on the cheek and waved to her son. "See you tonight, Tommy. Don't forget your homework." After she left, the house grew quiet. Michael finished his coffee and looked at his son, who was still sitting, staring at the screen. "Everything okay, kid?" Tommy shrugged. "Just tired of it all. School, grades, plans for the future. Mom's always talking about college, but we can barely make ends meet." Michael felt a twinge in his chest. Tommy was right. The family's financial situation was tight. A mechanic's salary in Youngstown didn't allow for a luxurious lifestyle, and Carrie's dreams of a better life sometimes seemed unattainable. Michael spent his days at the auto repair shop, fixing the old cars of the townspeople. His hands were covered with calluses, and machine oil was stuck under his fingernails, never completely washed off. Joe Martinelli, the owner of the shop, was a good man, but business wasn't going very well. Large car dealerships with modern equipment were stealing his customers. "Mike, take a look at this pickup truck," Joe called out around noon. "The owner says the engine is knocking." Michael opened the hood of the old Ford and listened to the engine. The job required concentration, but his thoughts kept returning to the morning conversation. Carrie had mentioned Havens more and more often, and she was staying late at work more often. She used to come home around 6, but now she sometimes didn't show up until 8. During his lunch break, Michael stopped at Mary's Diner, a popular spot among workers. 2 construction workers were sitting at the next table discussing local news. "Did you hear that Havens got divorced?" one of them said. "Yeah, his wife filed for divorce 3 months ago. I heard she got a nice alimony settlement," replied the other. Michael couldn't help but listen. Anthony Havens was divorced? Carrie had never mentioned it. Strange, considering how often she talked about work. After work, Michael stopped by the grocery store. As he passed the checkout, he saw a familiar face, Linda Graves, a neighbor who worked as a cleaner in the office building where Havens' company was located. "Hi, Mike," she said. "How's it going?" "Fine. How about you?" Linda lowered her voice. "You know, I don't want to gossip, but your Carrie often stays late at the office. Yesterday, I was cleaning their floor at 9 o'clock, and the lights in Havens' office were still on, and Carrie's car was in the parking lot." Michael felt his heart skip a beat. She must have a lot of work to do. Sure, Linda agreed quickly, but there was something else in her eyes. Carrie wasn't home yet. Tommy was doing his homework in his room, and Michael sat in the kitchen, thinking about his neighbor's words. At 7:30, the phone rang. "Hi, honey," Carrie's voice came over the line. "I'm sorry, but I'm going to be late. We're having problems with the paperwork for a big contract." "How much longer will you be?" "I think 2 hours. Havens wants everything done today." After Carrie hung up, Michael sat staring at the phone for a long time. His wife had always asked him how his day was and inquired about Tommy. Now her voice sounded tired and rushed. Carrie came home at 9:30. She looked exhausted, but at the same time strangely excited. There was a nervous energy in her movements. "How's it going?" Michael asked as she hung up her coat. "Tired. This contract with the Akron company is very important for the firm. Havens says that if we get it, it could change everything." "Change how?" Carrie sat down next to him on the sofa. "He's thinking about expanding. He might open a branch in Cleveland, and he wants me to help him with the project." There was a pride in her voice that Michael hadn't heard in a long time. Carrie had always dreamed of a career, of something more than life in Youngstown. But something about the way she talked about Havens bothered her husband. The next morning, Michael woke up before his alarm. Carrie was already standing in front of the mirror, but today she was dressing especially carefully. A new blouse he hadn't seen before, brighter makeup. "New blouse?" he asked. "I bought it yesterday during my lunch break. Haven said we're having important clients today, so I need to look presentable." At breakfast, Carrie was unusually lively, talking about the company's plans and new projects. Tommy listened, asking questions from time to time, while Michael sat silently, watching his wife. After she left, he sat at the kitchen table for a long time, finishing his cold coffee. Something was changing in their family, but he couldn't figure out what it was. Carrie was becoming different, more confident, ambitious, but at the same time, more distant. The day dragged on slowly in the workshop. Michael mechanically went about his work, but his thoughts were preoccupied with his family. By evening, he had made up his mind. He would stop by Carrie's office to pick her up and take her home. Maybe they could have dinner together and talk like they used to. The office building on West Federal Street was one of the most modern in Youngstown. Michael parked across the street and looked up at the lit windows. The lights were on the 4th floor, where Havens' company was located. He took the elevator up and pushed the glass door with the gold lettering, Havens Insurance. The reception area was empty, but voices came from the office. Michael recognized his wife's voice and a man's voice he hadn't heard before. They were laughing. Michael stood in the empty reception area, listening to the laughter coming from the office. His heart was beating so loudly that he was sure the sound would echo throughout the entire floor. He didn't know what to do, go in or leave. After a few seconds that seemed like an eternity, the office door opened. Carrie came out first, and her face paled when she saw her husband. Behind her appeared a man of about 45, wearing an expensive suit, with a confident smile and streaks of gray in his dark hair. Anthony Havens looked exactly as Michael had imagined him, successful, respectable, with that special polish that money and social status give. "Michael!" Carrie exclaimed, clearly trying to hide her embarrassment. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to take you home," he replied, keeping his eyes on Havens. "I thought maybe we could have dinner together." Havens stepped forward, extending his hand. "You must be Michael. Anthony Havens. Your wife talks about you a lot." The handshake was firm and confident. Michael felt the softness of the hands of a man who had never worked with his hands. Unlike his own, rough, calloused, with machine oil ingrained under his fingernails. "Carrie is an invaluable employee," Haven continued. "I don't know what I'd do without her, especially now that we're expanding." "Yes, she works hard," Michael replied dryly. An awkward pause hung in the air. Carrie hurriedly gathered her things. "We have to go," she said. "Tommy must be home by now." They were silent on the way home. Michael drove, glancing at his wife from time to time. Carrie looked out the window, her profile tense. "Havens seems like a nice guy," Michael finally said. "He's a good boss," Carrie replied curtly. "What were you laughing about?" Carrie turned to him. "What?" "When I came in, you were laughing. What was it?" I don't remember, probably some work joke. She turned back to the window. Michael, please don't do surprises like that anymore. It's embarrassing. Embarrassing? I'm your husband. That's exactly why. You can't just show up at my office like that. What will Havens think? That question stuck in Michael's mind all night. What would Havens think? Wasn't what her husband thought more important? The next morning at breakfast, Carrie announced the news. Havens is giving me a raise, she said, stirring her coffee. $300 a month. Tommy looked up from his plate. Really? That's great, Mom. Michael put down his fork. $300? For what? For extra responsibilities. I'll be helping with a new expansion project. Havens said I've proven myself to be a responsible and talented employee. When does it start? It already started. Yesterday. Michael felt something like a punch in the solar plexus. Yesterday, when he had caught them laughing in the office, Havens had just told Carrie about the promotion. That was what they had been talking about. That was why she had been so excited. But why hadn't she told him right away? After Carrie and Tommy left, Michael was left alone with his thoughts. $300 a month was a lot, almost a quarter of his own salary. But what did Havens expect in return? He worked distractedly in the workshop. Joe reprimanded him several times for his inattention. What's wrong, Mike? Are you in a daze? Sorry, family stuff. Want to talk about it? Michael shook his head. How could he explain his suspicions to Joe? They seemed ridiculous even to him. Carrie had gotten a promotion. Wasn't that a reason to be happy? But during his lunch break, he went back to Mary's diner and overheard the conversation at the next table again. This time it was two women, one of whom worked at the bank. I heard that Havens is very generous to his employees, said one. Especially to pretty secretaries, giggled the other. Remember Jennifer Porter? She worked for him a year ago. She got big bonuses too. Then she suddenly quit and moved to Columbus. I wonder why she left. They say Havens' wife suspected something. She made a scene, although now they're divorced, so... Michael got up and left the cafe, leaving his sandwich uneaten. Rumors and gossip, but they were forming a disturbing picture. That evening, he decided to take action. When Carrie said she was going to be late again, he told Tommy he was going to a friend's house and set off to follow his wife. He parked on the street opposite the office building and waited. At 8 o'clock, most of the lights went out, but the lights on the 4th floor were still on. At 8:30, a black BMW pulled up to the building. Havens got out. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. If Havens had just arrived, did that mean Carrie was alone in the office? Or had they met somewhere else, and now they were coming back? An hour later, they came out together. Havens held Carrie's elbow, helping her down the steps. The gesture was gallant, but too intimate for a boss and subordinate. They stopped by Carrie's car, and Michael watched them talk. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes. Havens touched Carrie's hand several times, and she laughed. When Carrie finally arrived home, it was 11:15. How's it going? Michael asked, pretending to read the newspaper. Tired, she replied, avoiding his gaze. This project turned out to be more complicated than we thought. Was Havens working late too? Carrie froze as she took off her coat. What? I asked if your boss was staying late too. Yes, of course. We were working on some documents together. Michael nodded, but something tightened inside him. Carrie was lying. He had seen Havens' car pull up at 8:30. Where had she been before that? The next day, he asked Joe for the day off and spent it gathering information about Havens. In the library, he found articles about the businessman in local newspapers. Anthony Havens had founded his company 10 years ago after moving to Youngstown from Pittsburgh. He married the daughter of a local banker, but the marriage broke up 3 months ago. The reasons for the divorce were not given, but one article mentioned irreconcilable differences. In the city archives, Michael learned that Havens had bought a house in the prestigious Ox Hill neighborhood for $500,000. The house had a swimming pool, a tennis court, and a view of the lake. It was nothing like their modest home on Maplewood Avenue. That evening, when Carrie was late again, Michael decided to drive past Havens' house. The mansion was located on a hill, surrounded by tall trees. The lights were on, and 2 cars were parked in the driveway, Havens' black BMW and Carrie's blue Honda. Michael parked some distance away and watched. An hour later, Carrie came out of the house. Even in the darkness, he could see Havens walking her to the car. They hugged goodbye, hugged. Michael gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. There was no longer any doubt. His wife was cheating on him. He arrived home before Carrie and was sitting in the dark living room when she returned. Carrie turned on the light and gasped when she saw him. "You scared me. Why are you sitting in the dark?" "Thinking," Michael replied. "About what?" "About us. About our family. About what's going on." Carrie sat down at the opposite end of the sofa. "What do you mean?" "You've changed, Carrie. You've become a different person over the last few months. I got a promotion. I'm happy." "It's not about the promotion." Michael turned to her. "It's about how you got the promotion." Carrie's face turned to stone. "What are you trying to say?" "You know what I'm trying to say." They stared at each other in tense silence. Finally, Carrie stood up. "I'm not going to listen to these accusations. I'm tired. I'm going to bed." Carrie: "No, Michael, I work hard. I'm trying to provide a better future for our family, and you suspect me of God knows what." She went upstairs, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts. The next morning, a cold politeness hung between them. Carrie got ready for work in silence, avoiding his gaze. Tommy sensed the tension and remained silent as well, eating breakfast quickly and rushing off to school. In the workshop, Michael worked like a machine. His hands performed the familiar movements, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered every little detail of the last few months. Carrie's new clothes, her frequent delays, her changed manner of talking about work, and the hugs at Havens' house. After work, he drove back to the office building. This time he noticed that Carrie left at the usual time, at 6 in the evening, alone. Havens showed up half an hour later and drove off in the opposite direction. Maybe he was wrong? Maybe the evening at Havens' house was an exception related to work? At home, Carrie was unusually friendly. She cooked his favorite dinner, roast beef and potatoes, asked him about work, and took an interest in Tommy's activities. Michael almost believed that all his suspicions were the product of a sick imagination. But when they went to bed, he noticed Carrie hiding her phone under her pillow. She always left it on the bedside table. Around 2 in the morning, the phone vibrated. Carrie carefully took it out and read the message. In the dim light of the screen, Michael could see the smile on her face. She quickly typed a reply and hid the phone again. Who was texting her at 2 in the morning? In the morning, while Carrie was in the shower and Tommy was still asleep, Michael tried to look at her phone, but it was locked with a password. Carrie had never put a password on her phone before. At breakfast, he decided to try a different approach. "By the way, how's Havens doing? I heard he recently got divorced." Carrie choked on her coffee. "How do you know?" "People talk. It's a small town. Everyone knows everything about everyone else." "Yes, he got divorced a few months ago. That's his personal life. I don't get involved." "He must be lonely. Such a successful man, and now he lives alone in a big house." Carrie stood up abruptly. "I have to get to work." After she left, Michael sat at his desk for a long time, analyzing her reaction. The mention of Havens' house had clearly hurt her. She knew about the house. She had been there. That evening, he followed his wife again. This time, Carrie really did work late. The lights in her office were on until 9. But when she left the building, Havens approached her. They stood talking for a while, then got into his car and drove away. Michael followed them to a restaurant in the city center, an expensive place where he could never afford to dine. Through the window, he could see them sitting at a table by the window, talking and laughing. Havens' hand was on top of Carrie's. This was no longer a business dinner, it was a date. Michael sat in his car across from the restaurant for almost 2 hours, watching his wife and her lover. When they finally left, Havens walked Carrie to her car and kissed her on the lips. It was a long, passionate kiss that left no room for doubt. At home, Michael pretended to be asleep when Carrie returned at midnight. She carefully undressed in the dark and slipped under the covers. Her body smelled of someone else's perfume and wine. Michael lay next to her, clenching his teeth, feeling the rage growing inside him. The next few days turned into a painful game of make-believe. Carrie continued to play the loving wife and mother, while Michael tried to act as if nothing had happened. But every word she said, every glance she gave him, now seemed like a lie. At breakfast, she talked about work, mentioning projects and meetings, but Michael knew the truth. He knew that under the guise of overtime, she was spending time with Havens. He knew that the $300 raise was payment for her betrayal. "Mom, you seem sad today," Tommy remarked on Thursday morning. Carrie flinched. "What? No, I'm just tired. I have a lot to do at work." "Maybe you should take some time off?" Michael suggested, watching her reaction. "I can't. It's too important a time for the company," she replied quickly. Of course she couldn't. How could she leave a lover who paid so generously for her attention? That same day, Michael made up his mind. He would go to Haven and talk to him man to man. Perhaps if he explained the situation, if he asked him to leave his family alone, the rich man would understand and back off. Haven's office was on the 4th floor, behind double oak doors with brass handles. Michael knocked and entered without waiting for a response. Haven sat behind a massive mahogany desk, talking on the phone. Seeing Michael, he raised his finger to ask him to wait and finished his conversation. "Michael, what a surprise! Have a seat!" He pointed to a leather chair across from the desk. "What brings you here?" Michael remained standing. "I think you know." "To be honest, I have no idea." Havens leaned back in his chair, studying his face. "You look upset." "I know about you and Carrie." They stared at each other for a few seconds. Havens broke the silence first. "You know what exactly?" "Don't play games with me. I saw you together. The restaurant, your house, the kisses." Havens stood up and walked over to the window, shoving his hands in his pants pockets. "Carrie didn't tell you?" "Tell me what?" "That she filed for divorce 2 weeks ago." The words hit Michael like a physical blow. "What?" "I thought she discussed it with you." Havens turned to him. "She said the marriage had been over for a long time, that you were living like roommates." "That's not true." "Not true? Michael, when was the last time you talked to your wife? Not about bills or household chores, but really talked? When was the last time you went out together? When was the last time you made love?" Each question was like a slap in the face because Michael knew the answers. Months? Years? "Carrie is a smart, beautiful woman," Haven continued. "She deserves better than a life with a man who takes her for granted. You have no right. I have no right to make her happy? To give her what she wants? I can offer her the life she dreams of. Travel, beautiful clothes, a good education for your son. At what price?" Haven smiled. "You think I'm buying her? Michael, I'm in love with your wife, and she's in love with me. She's my wife. On paper. But when a woman stops wearing her wedding ring, what does that mean?" Michael instinctively looked at Carrie's hand in his mind. When was the last time he had seen her wearing her ring? He couldn't remember. "Listen," Haven returned to the table and sat down. "I don't want to hurt you, but the facts are the facts. Carrie is unhappy in her marriage and wants to start a new life, with me. What about Tommy? Have you thought about him?" "Of course. I'm willing to provide him with the best education he can get. Private school, college, whatever it takes." Michael felt the world crumbling around him. Havens spoke calmly, rationally, as if he were discussing a business deal, and the worst part was that there was logic in his words. "Carrie deserves to be happy," Havens added more softly, "and if you really love her, you'll let her go." Michael left the office in a daze. It was cold outside and it was starting to rain, but he didn't notice. Havens' words echoed in his head. Divorce. Carrie had filed for divorce and hadn't told him. He got into his car and sat there for a long time, staring at the windshield. 17 years of marriage, 17 years of living together, and she had decided to end it without even talking to him. At home, Michael went straight to the desk in the living room and began rummaging through the documents. Bank statements, bills, insurance policies. And there, at the bottom of the pile, he found what he was looking for. A copy of the divorce petition filed in Mahoning County Court 2 weeks ago. Plaintiff, Carrie Ann Connolly. Defendant, Michael James Connolly. Grounds, irreconcilable differences. Michael read the document over and over, trying to believe what was happening. Carrie had really filed for divorce, secretly, without saying a word to him. He heard the front door open. Tommy was home from school. "Hi, Dad. Is Mom home?" "No." Michael folded the papers and put them in his pocket. "She's working." "Again? She's been working all the time lately?" "Yeah, all the time." Tommy went into the kitchen, and Michael heard him open the refrigerator, the usual sounds of an ordinary day. But nothing else was ordinary. Carrie came home at 8 o'clock. She looked upset but tried to hide it. "Hi," she said, hanging up her coat. "How's it going?" "Fine." Michael sat on the sofa, his eyes fixed on the newspaper. "How about you?" "Tired, long day." "I can imagine. Divorce is a difficult process." Carrie froze. "What?" Michael took the papers out of his pocket and threw them on the coffee table. "Did you want to tell me about this? Or were you planning on me finding out from the bailiff?" Carrie's face turned pale. She slowly approached and picked up the papers. "Michael, 2 weeks ago. You filed 2 weeks ago and didn't say a word to me. I wanted to find the right moment." "The right moment? For what? To tell your husband you're destroying our family?" Carrie sat down in the chair across from him. "Our family broke up a long time ago. We were just pretending everything was fine." "That's your opinion." "Michael, be honest. When was the last time we were happy? Really happy?" He wanted to answer, but couldn't. He couldn't remember. "We've become strangers," Carrie continued. "You come home from work, have dinner, watch TV, and go to bed. I do the laundry, clean up, cook, and go to bed too. We don't talk, we don't laugh together, we don't cheat on each other." Carrie pursed her lips. "I didn't want this to happen. But it did." "Yes." They sat in silence. Music was playing upstairs. Tommy was doing his homework. "What will you tell your son?" Michael asked. "The truth. That sometimes people change. That love can end." "What about his love for his family? For his home? For a normal life?" "Anthony is willing," Carrie began, but Michael interrupted her. "Anthony? Already Anthony? He's willing to help with Tommy's education. Private school, college. With your lover's money." "Don't say that." "How am I supposed to talk to him? How am I supposed to refer to the man who destroyed my family?" Carrie stood up. "Anthony didn't destroy our family. It was already broken before I met him." "Met him? You worked for him for 3 years." "I mean, met him as a man, as a person who understands me, who appreciates me." "And the $300 raise? Is that understanding too?" Carrie blushed. "I earned that raise." "In bed?" The slap sounded like a gunshot. Michael felt a burning sensation on his cheek, but he didn't look away. "Don't ever say that again," Carrie hissed. "I'm a good employee. Anthony appreciates my work." "And your body." "Michael, stop. Why, does the truth hurt? You sell yourself for money, Carrie. What do you call that?" This time she didn't hit him. She just stood there trembling with rage. "I'm leaving," she said finally. "Where?" "To Anthony's. Today." "What about Tommy?" "I'll pick him up tomorrow. I'll talk to him, explain." "You can't just take my son." "I can. And I will. Michael, it's over. Understand that." She went upstairs to pack her things. Michael heard her opening and closing drawers, the floorboards creaking beneath her feet. They were familiar sounds, but now they meant the end. Half an hour later, Carrie came downstairs with a suitcase. She turned at the front door. "I didn't want it to end like this." "But it has." "Yes." After she left, Michael sat in the dark living room for a long time. Upstairs, Tommy listened to music, unaware that his world had just fallen apart. Tomorrow morning, the boy would wake up and find out that his mother no longer lived at home, that his family no longer existed. Michael got up and went to the window. It was raining outside, turning the autumn leaves into a slippery mess. He thought about his 17 years of marriage, about the dreams they once had, about the house they bought, thinking they would live there forever, about the plans for the future that were now in ruins. And somewhere in the big house on the hill, his wife was lying in the arms of another man, a man who could give her everything he couldn't. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A message from an unknown number. "I'm sorry." K. Michael stared at the screen for a long time, then deleted the message and blocked the number. Michael didn't sleep all night. He lay in his empty bed, listening to the sounds of the house, which had once seemed cozy but now sounded like a funeral march. The creaking floorboards, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock in the living room. Everything reminded him that he was now alone here. In the morning, he got up before his alarm and made breakfast for Tommy. Eggs, toast, orange juice, everything as usual. But when his son came downstairs sleepy and disheveled, Michael realized he didn't know how to start the conversation. "Where's Mom?" Tommy asked, sitting down at the table. "She left early. Things to do at work." Tommy nodded, unaware of the lie. Michael looked at his son, at his dark hair, which he had inherited from his mother, at his gray eyes, which were so like his own. At 16, Tommy was almost an adult, but at that moment, he seemed like a defenseless child. "Dad, are you okay? You seem strange." "Everything's fine, I just didn't sleep well." After Tommy left for school, Michael called the auto repair shop and told Joe he was sick. He couldn't work now, couldn't pretend that life was going on as usual. He spent the whole day at home, wandering aimlessly from room to room. The bedroom still smelled of Carrie's perfume. Her creams and lotions were on the shelf in the bathroom. She hadn't taken everything. The dresses she hadn't taken with her were hanging in the closet. Around noon, the phone rang. Carrie. "Michael, we need to talk." "About what?" "About Tommy. I want to pick him up today." "He's at school." "I know. I'll pick him up after school. I'll take him to my place." "Your place? You mean Haven's?" Pause. "Yes. We talked to Anthony. He agrees to let Tommy live with us." "What if I don't agree?" "Michael, don't make this difficult. A child should be with his mother. A child should be at home, in his own home, with his friends at his school. Anthony is willing to pay for private school, the best education." Michael hung up. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. He didn't answer, then again, and again. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Michael drove to Tommy's school. He parked across from the main entrance and waited. At 3:30, the students began to leave the building. Michael saw Tommy in the crowd of teenagers and waved to him. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I decided to meet you. Get in." On the way home, Tommy talked about school, and Michael realized that this might be their last normal conversation as father and son living in the same house. At home, Michael made tea and sat down across from his son at the kitchen table. "Tommy, I need to tell you something." The boy looked up from his homework. "What's wrong?" "Your mom and I have decided to live apart." "What?" "Sometimes adults realize that it's better not to live together. It doesn't mean we don't love you. It's just... Are you getting divorced?" Michael nodded. "Yes." Tommy was silent, staring at the table. Then he looked up. "Because of her job? Because she's always away?" "Partly." "Where is she now?" "At her boss's office, Mr. Haven's." Understanding slowly dawned on the boy. "Is she seeing him?" Michael didn't answer, but Tommy understood. "Fuck," the teenager said quietly. "Tommy." "I'm sorry, but this is just shit, Dad." Michael hugged his son, and he didn't resist. They sat like that for a few minutes, and Michael could feel the boy's shoulders shaking with suppressed tears. "What's going to happen now?" Tommy asked. "I don't know. Mom wants you to live with her." "And you?" "I want you to stay here, but it's your decision." Tommy pulled away. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my home. My friends are here, and I don't want to live with that jerk." At 7 o'clock, Carrie arrived. Michael saw her get out of the car through the window. It wasn't her old Honda, but Haven's black BMW. Haven stayed in the car. Carrie came in without knocking. She still had the keys. "Where's Tommy?" "In his room." "Get him. We have to go." "He doesn't want to go." Carrie frowned. "What did you tell him?" "The truth." "What truth?" "That his mother is cheating on his father with a rich lover." "Michael." "What? Isn't it true?" Carrie went upstairs. Michael heard her talking to Tommy, heard the boy screaming that he wouldn't go anywhere. The voices grew louder until finally the door slammed. Carrie came downstairs with red eyes. "He refuses to go. You turned him against me. I told him the truth. You've destroyed our family for money." "Not for money." "Then what for? For love? You love a man who buys you gifts? Anthony doesn't buy me. He cares about me. He gives me what I deserve. What do you deserve, Carrie? Cars, jewelry, a big house? Respect, attention, the feeling that I'm important, that I'm needed. You were needed here, by me, by Tommy, as a housekeeper, as a servant, to cook, wash, clean, and keep quiet. That's called a family. That's called prison. They stood facing each other in the living room where they had spent thousands of evenings, where they had made plans for the future, where they had once been happy. Carrie, come home, Michael said quietly. We can fix this. No, we can't. We can. I'll change. I'll pay more attention. Michael, stop. I don't love you. Do you understand? I haven't loved you for years. The words hung in the air like a bullet, finding their target. Do you love Haven? Yes. Even knowing he's a married man who buys women? He's divorced. He got divorced 3 months ago. How many women like you did he have while he was married? Carrie didn't answer. You think you're special? You think he'll marry you? He promised. Promised? Carrie, you're a secretary from the working class. He's a millionaire. What could you possibly have that he doesn't, other than sex for money? This time she didn't hit him. She just looked at him with such hatred that he backed away. I'm taking Tommy tomorrow, she said in an icy voice. With the police, if I have to. Try it. Carrie headed for the door, but turned back at the threshold. You'll regret this, Michael. When you're alone in this house, you'll remember my words. After she left, Michael stood at the window for a long time, watching the BMW drive away. Then he went up to Tommy. The boy was lying on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Is she gone? Yes. Will she come back? I don't know. Tommy turned to his father. Dad, what if she really does bring the police? She won't. She has no grounds. But Michael wasn't so sure. Carrie had changed. She was different. Who knows what she's capable of now? He couldn't sleep again that night. He lay in the dark thinking about his 17 years of marriage, about what had gone wrong, about whether he could have changed anything. At 2 a.m, he received a message from Carrie. I need my things. I'll come by tomorrow evening when Tommy is at his friend's. Michael stared at the message for a long time, then replied, Okay. The next day passed in a fog. Michael tried to work, but Joe sent him home, saying he looked like a dead man. Tommy went to a friend's house to work on a group project and planned to stay the night. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Michael heard a car pull up in the driveway. Carrie arrived alone in her Honda. Apparently, she had decided not to flaunt her lover's wealth in a neighborhood where everyone knew each other. She came in with 2 empty bags. I'm here to get my things, she said dryly. I know. Carrie went upstairs, and Michael could hear her walking around the bedroom, opening closets and drawers, the sounds of his former life dying before his eyes. Half an hour later, she came downstairs with full bags. Is that all? For now, I'll get the rest later. Michael stood in the kitchen doorway, watching her prepare to leave his life forever. Carrie, she stopped at the door. What? Last time I'm asking. Are you staying? Carrie turned around. There was no love or regret in her eyes, only exhaustion. No, Michael, it's over. Then go to your millionaire, but Tommy is staying here. We'll see. She opened the door, and the cold November air rushed into the house. Goodbye, Michael. Michael stood silently, watching her walk to the car. Carrie loaded her bags into the trunk and got behind the wheel. The engine didn't start right away. The old car was acting up in the cold. Finally, the engine roared to life, and Carrie slowly drove down the driveway. She stopped at the gate, and Michael thought she had changed her mind, that she would turn around and come back. But the car moved forward and disappeared around the bend. Mike closed the door and leaned against it. The silence in the house was deafening. He went into the living room, sat down in his chair, and tried to figure out what would happen next. Around 11 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Carrie's number. Hello? This is Detective Riley from the Youngstown Police Department. Is this Michael Connolly? His heart skipped a beat. Yes. Sir, I need to tell you about an accident. The rest of the words merged into an indistinct hum. Carrie. Car accident. Hospital. Didn't survive. Michael dropped the phone and slowly sank to the floor. Detective Janet Riley arrived at the Connolly home at 6:30 in the morning. Michael had been up all night, sitting in his chair trying to comprehend what had happened. When the doorbell rang, he knew who it was. Riley was a woman in her 40s with short graying hair and tired but attentive eyes. In her 20 years on the force, she had seen enough to read people like an open book. "Mr. Connolly? I'm Detective Riley. We spoke on the phone." Michael nodded and let her in. They sat down in the living room, him in his chair, and her on the sofa where Carrie had been sitting yesterday. "First of all, please accept my condolences," Riley said, taking out her notebook. "I know how hard this is. Thank you. I need to ask you a few questions. It's standard procedure." Michael waited. "When was the last time you saw your wife?" "Last night, around 8. She came by to pick up some things." "To get her things?" "We decided to split up. She moved in with her boss." Riley made a note. "Anthony Havens? Do you know him?" "I know a lot, Mr. Connolly. Tell me about last night." Michael told him about Carrie's visit, how she had packed her things, and their last conversation. But he didn't tell him the whole truth. He didn't tell him what had happened after Carrie got into the car. "Did she seem upset?" "Definitely. We were both upset." "What did you talk about?" "About our son. She wanted to take him with her. I didn't want her to." "Did you argue?" Michael hesitated. "Yes, you could say that." Riley nodded. "Where is your son now?" "At a friend's house. I didn't want to wake him up in the middle of the night. I wanted to tell him myself in the morning." "I see." The detective closed her notebook. "Mr. Connolly, I have to tell you something. Your wife did not die in a car accident." Michael tried to look surprised, even though his heart was pounding. "What?" "She was murdered, strangled. Her body was left in the car to make it look like an accident." Michael grabbed the armrests of his chair, pretending to be shocked. "Murdered? Who could have done this?" "That's what we're trying to find out. That's why I need to know everything about your relationship with your wife, your plans for last night." "I was at home, alone, after she left." "Can anyone confirm that?" "Number Tommy was at a friend's house. I don't know if any of the neighbors saw me." After the detective left, Michael called Tommy's friend and asked him to bring his son home. The boy returned half an hour later, cheerful and unaware of anything. "Hi, Dad. We played video games all night. Jason got a new one." He fell silent when he saw his father's face. "What happened?" Michael hugged his son and slowly told him about his mother's death. Not about the murder. Tommy would find out about that later. For now, it was enough to say that his mother had died in a car accident. Tommy cried, burying his face in his father's shoulder, and Michael felt guilt and relief battling inside him. Guilt for what he had done. Relief that his family would no longer be torn apart. Over the next few days, Detective Riley continued her investigation. She questioned Anthony Havens, who was devastated by Carrie's death. He had an ironclad alibi, a business dinner at a restaurant with clients from Cleveland from 7 to 11 p.m. Michael closely followed the news of the investigation, trying to figure out how close the police were to the truth. So far, everything was going well. No one suspected what had really happened on that fateful night, but the memories haunted him. He replayed those last minutes over and over in his head. After Carrie loaded the bags into the trunk and got behind the wheel, Michael left the house. He hadn't planned it. He just felt he had to say something to try one more time. Carrie had trouble starting the car, and he walked up to the driver's window. She rolled down the window. "What now, Michael?" "Please, for the last time, don't do this. Don't destroy our family." "The family is already destroyed. I told you. It's over." "What about Tommy? Do you think about him?" "I think about his future. About him getting the best education, the best opportunities, things you'll never be able to give him." Those words hit him hardest. Michael felt something inside him snap. "Get out of the car." "What?" "Get out. We need to talk about this. I don't have time. Anthony is waiting for me." Michael grabbed the door handle and yanked it open. Carrie didn't have time to press the lock button. "Michael, What are you doing?" He pulled her out of the car. Carrie resisted, trying to break free. "You can't just take him and leave. You can't take my son away." "Let me go." They struggled by the car. Michael was stronger, his desperation giving him strength. His hands closed around her neck. "I won't let you ruin his life," he hissed. Carrie tried to scream, but only a hoarse sound came out. Her eyes widened in horror, and she scratched his hands with her nails. Michael squeezed harder. 17 years of marriage, 17 years of love and hope, all of it was dying along with the woman in his arms. When Carrie went limp, he held her for a while, unable to believe what had happened. Then he carefully put the body back in the car, got behind the wheel, and fastened his seatbelt. He started the car and drove to the shopping center. There he left the car with the body in the parking lot and walked home through the woods. Now, a week later, Michael realized he had committed the perfect crime. He had no motive that the police could easily prove. Everyone knew about Carrie's affair, but many husbands find out about their wives' infidelities and don't kill them. But after 10 days of investigation, Riley came to him again. "Mr. Connolly, we need to talk." This time she wasn't alone. With her was a young detective named Thomas Bradley. "What's going on?" Michael asked, letting them into the house. "We've found some discrepancies in the case," Riley said. "First, the medical examiner determined that your wife was killed between 8:30 and 9:30. Second, your neighbor, Mrs. Gardner, saw you leaving the house around 9. Michael felt his heart skip a beat. "I was taking out the trash. The trash cans are by the house. Why did you go to the garage?" "I don't remember exactly. Maybe I was checking to see if the garage was locked." Bradley interrupted. "Mr. Connolly, we found your fingerprints on the outside handle of your wife's car. Fresh prints. That's my wife. I've opened that door hundreds of times. But these prints were on top of the others. That means they were left there last." Michael realized the walls were closing in on him. "What are you saying?" Riley stood up. "Michael Connolly, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Carrie Connolly." At the station, he was placed in a holding cell. Michael lay on the narrow cot and thought about how everything had gone wrong. He had only planned to talk to Carrie, to convince her to stay. But when she rejected him again, when she said those cruel words about Tommy the next day, Detective Bradley questioned him. "Listen, Michael," he said in a friendly tone. "We understand what happened. Your wife was cheating on you, wanted to take your child away, ruin your life. Any man in your position could have lost control." Michael remained silent. "We have a motive, evidence, false testimony. The case against you is very strong. But if you confess, tell us how it happened. It could mitigate the sentence." "I want a lawyer." Attorney Robert Shaw was an elderly, tired man who had seen too many cases like this. "The case against you is serious," he said honestly. "There's a motive, a weak alibi, physical evidence. But if it was a crime of passion, what does that mean? If you confess and explain the circumstances, jealousy, emotional turmoil, you could get 10 to 15 years instead of life." Michael thought about it all night. Tommy was left all alone. Who would take care of him if his father went to prison for the rest of his life? The next day, he asked to see Detective Riley. "I want to tell you what really happened," he said quietly. Riley turned on the tape recorder. "I'm listening." Michael told her the whole truth. How he tried to stop Carrie, how they argued, how he lost control. He told her he didn't plan to kill her, that it happened in a moment of desperation and rage. "I didn't want her to die," he finished. "I just wanted her to stay. I wanted us to try to save our family." Riley nodded. "Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Connolly." The trial took place 4 months later. Michael pleaded guilty to second-degree manslaughter. The judge sentenced him to 14 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 7 years. Tommy sat in the courtroom. The 17-year-old looked at his father with pain and understanding in his eyes. After the sentence was handed down, they were given a few minutes to say goodbye. "Dad," Tommy said, hugging him, "I understand why you did it." "No, son. What I did was wrong. Never forget that. But she wanted to destroy our family." "The family was already destroyed. I just didn't want to admit it." Tommy moved in with his Uncle Kerry in Akron. He visited his father regularly in prison, telling him about his studies and his plans to go to college. Michael was proud of his son and regretted every day that he had deprived him of a normal childhood. Anthony Havens closed his company and moved to another state. Some said he blamed himself for Carrie's death. If it weren't for their affair, she would still be alive. Michael spent 8 years in prison. He was released at the age of 46, old and gray, but with an understanding of what he had done and why it was wrong. Tommy met him at the prison gates. Now he was a grown man with a job and plans for the future. "Welcome home, Dad," he said. They embraced under the gray sky of Youngstown, two men who had lost everything but still had each other. And that was the only truth that mattered.